All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and we are back with Everything Meta episode 4. It's exciting. I want to give you guys today something a little different from the perspective of someone trying to potentially start a token project from someone who has lots of experience with token projects. Sound good?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. So let's start with what are the basic steps that go into uh, maybe launching a token project that the average investor gambler doesn't think about?
Well, gosh. Oh, and just so everybody knows, I have no idea what the topic of each episode is before
No.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, I'll say the first thing is that not every project needs a token.
Mm.
I think that's a huge thing. I think that the actual token sometimes can be a bit of a hindrance on the project as a whole. I think that people can cash flow and create good businesses without launching a token. It's everybody thinks like, oh, maybe this token will equal this other token's market cap, or this is our comparable project that we're looking at, and it's hard. Taking care of a chart is very difficult. Obviously, the market is not always just going straight up. And I think people are able to build and raise money and do everything they need to do without a token.
Sure.
So that being said, I would say the first step is wondering if you actually want to have a token or not, right? Maybe a lot of people that's probably the first step.
And so, what goes into that decision-making process for you? How do you for instance, with ScienceDAO, there are so many ways you can fund scientific projects. Obviously, many traditional ways, and you decided, hey, the best way in this case would be through a token project. Why?
Well, I don't know if it's the absolute best, but there are problems that we're trying to solve. The token itself is merely a gateway,
Sure.
right? It's a gateway. It's like access to a club, right? It's a membership in the DAO. The actual funding comes from the real life company making an equity raise using the proof of ownership smart contracts as the NFTs, right? So whether it's the absolute best way, I mean, what we're trying to do is democratize the decision making on whether something receives funding or not, right? So many cases there's especially in like the deep science community and whatnot, the decision to fund a specific project usually comes down to like one or just a few individuals that are managing some fund that specializes in that field, right? And their day-to-day life, you never know how they could be feeling one day, and there could be like some world-changing cure, and it doesn't make sense, right? Like it's too early. It doesn't really make sense to an investor that might want to get in at a later stage. And so did I just get really big?
Yeah, I'm just adjusting the camera, so you keep going. Yeah, don't trick us.
So I mean, a lot of times the investment decision comes down to an individual, and they could say yes or no depending on so many different circumstances, right? Just because something deserves funding or deserves to be out there doesn't necessarily mean it's commercially viable. And why would a professional investor managing a fund give money to something unless it's a donation that's not like entirely commercially viable? Also, the amount of pressure on pulling the trigger or spending, several $1 million in a seed round, right, for a biotech company. That pressure for that decision coming down onto one individual, whereas with the science DAO, it's spread around 1,000 people, right?
Sure.
It takes the pressure off. It mitigates risk, right? You kind of de-risk because it's coming. But if somebody wants to add, wants to expose themselves to more risk, then the opportunity is there. Just because there's 1,000 people that can fund something doesn't mean that some of the top science DAO holders, right, who have essentially earned that opportunity, can't put in more if they want to. But we need to nail down our first term sheet. And get the ball rolling on that to really get that structure down. So right now it's a building, kind of a building phase kind of discussion, a few things, and really it is a DAO. It is a DAO. We do have a bit of a technocratic filter to filter through ideas and whatnot, but like in regards to how the overall project moves forward, like people should really have input, and they should get to work. Otherwise we would have called it Joey and Dee's science project, right?
You're making volcanoes and stuff. Yeah. No, I get it. And what you said actually always segues right into my next question, which is, what is it that a person or a team should have in terms of finances set aside for a project to help assure that a project is not going to fail for lack of funding, if no other reason?
Really depends, man. Tokens are all over the place, right? So you got to think what I think you need to go business first, unless it's just a straight meme token. Right? I think it's business first, unless it's a straight meme token. Like for the monkey project, I provided the ETH for the liquidity, and then we burned it and renounced. Nobody owns it. We just put it out there. 6 ETH. ETH was like maybe 15, 14 at the time, right? So not that much. It's a lot of money, right? But it's not like you're raising millions of dollars. Granted, there's no marketing wallet, so it's not like we just get a trickle of ETH, in from some tax or something, right? So
sure,
that money's gone forever. Yeah. But I think people should really focus on what the business is. Start there. Like, what are you trying to do? Is there some type of revenue potential, or is it only token, right? Because if it's only token, it's essentially it's nothing, except maybe a meme, and that itself can be very strong, right? Like many token projects, right, like SHIB and whatnot, never had any utility, and that's kind of an interesting point itself. Not to get off track, but projects like SHIB and Saitama, no utility at all, until they start to get to a pretty sizable market cap. And then what happens? People introduce utility, right? Maybe from teams or projects that have never built that or have managed that sort of thing before, right? And then they can probably get it done. I think that they're all probably really capable. However, then you have a bunch of people wondering, well, when is this coming? When's an update? When's this happening? So on and so forth. And the overall culture in crypto, especially in that micro cap type space, even though those projects got huge market caps, is like sort of like a self of entitlement. Always deserving to know, like, when is this? Always, being able to DM anybody in the space, pretty much, right, on Telegram. And so that's always really tough. So that's kind of a, sometimes utility. So I would say, like, I know somebody with a trading platform.
Hmm.
It's an awesome trading platform. It's uses AI, uses all sorts of stuff to do like auto trades. It's central exchange and decentralized exchange integrated. So like you can be trading all the time and have an AI bot doing it for you and whatnot. And so it I mean, that's like the holy grail, right? But they launched a token. They did a raise. They had VCs in on the private round. They launch. That's a liquidation event for most VCs. Token goes down. Now it's like this perfectly good, amazing project, right? Has a token. What good is the token doing it? I don't know. You know, I don't know.
Well, okay. So, audio. Forgive me. Anyway, you mentioned the VCs and the early liquidity part. I'm interested in that part in particular. So, like, you can obviously launch a token with varying levels of liquidity, uh, very little, an ETH, like 2 ETH, whatever, to whatever. What goes into making that decision for you, for instance?
Oh, well, I like to start with a little higher liquidity. If you start with really low, there's all sorts of snipers and bots and whatnot that can buy a ton of supply for very cheap. I mean, you're talking like 0.05 ETH. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like $50. They can grab. Like I just saw one last night. Launched. There's like somebody ran a multi-wallet thing on it and bought like 10 or 15 wallets for like 0.05 ETH per wallet.
Mm.
You know, and so then they had like, I don't know, 40% of the supply. You know what I mean? So I like to start with a little higher liquidity just because you know it's it, it's harder, then the bots and whatnot, they have to pay for it, right? They have to
Mm.
pay for it, and then you don't have people like expecting a 100x within the first day where they can put in like zero point 0.1 ETH and it turns into 10 and they're like, oh, I made 10 ETH, because that just it's like, it's not unrealistic, right? Because it happens all the time, but I don't know if it's the best thing to have everybody only trading the launches, because then the projects will never like really succeed, right? So
Mm. Good. So, as someone who, as you've pointed out in the past, and stop me, I'm never trying to get to the actual personal details of these questions, just kind of general
you're good.
rules or your general thoughts. So, someone who's invested, like you said, just as much outside of crypto as inside, who comes from a more traditional background or who has had a traditional, maybe a VC experience. Why do you think it is that coins or tokens don't operate in those multiple rounds of funding in a way that a business would outside of the crypto space?
They do.
Well, not all of them. I mean, what I mean to say is not all the rounds, right? Like
They do.
yeah, okay,
Yeah. So a lot of times, a lot of these projects, they run through, seed. Sometimes that's like the IDO,
right,
the direct offering, right, to the public. But there's also like, angel rounds or seed rounds, and then there might be some type of Series A or later stage round, which is like very confusing, right? Because you have a token, and then you have a company and equity, and so like I don't know what some of these projects or companies are really trying to do. You know what I mean? It's like when they
mm,
sell a token to the public, it's like they're raising money for their business, right? And so like there's a couple projects that come to us and they're trying to raise like, 250, 500,000, $1 million, right? And the, they have a token just for the purpose of raising the money, but does it matter like what the token does? I don't think so, because they have an entire business model. Their business model is not necessarily based on making the token price go up, right? It's
Sure.
like based on something completely separate. And so they're like raising money, but not necessarily giving, it's not an equity round, right? They're not raising money in exchange for equity in their company, although the money is going towards bolstering the development of their revenue streams, right? It's very strange, and weird the way that a lot of these projects use tokens and company to raise. I think it's a little bit.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of any project that actually kind of played it all the way, 6 rounds to a launch. So maybe it's just my own ignorance, which is fine. I learned something new today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll show you one
Yeah.
after the video. I'll share my screen with you. I'll show you one that had multiple rounds pre-launch, and then is also still approaching us to raise capital at a later stage round. So
Yeah. Well, cool. Early stage of a project. Here's one that's near and dear to you. What would you rather have? The top marketers on YouTube and Twitter, if you will, or green candles? Which is more shillable? Which is more successful?
Goodness.
Yeah.
Well, gosh, I mean, a lot of the YouTubers and influencers and whatnot, they do have quite a bit of pull. But I think that the more, this is just personal opinion, but there's a lot of rotation created out of them, and little by little, always pushing people to buy the top of a project or something, or reporting the news, like reporting like a big green candle. It's not always great, right? Because it creates FOMO. People buy the top, the project goes down, whatever. People are unhappy, and then people's buying power, and then those YouTube videos and whatnot, they become less potent, right? Less effective. However, it's good for exposure, right? It's good for exposure. Green candles are great, right? I mean, I don't know, man. I don't do a ton of tweeting. I never really tweet prices, or what anything that's going on regarding price action. Just like updates on projects, progress reports, and stuff like that. Goodness, I think there's a way. I mean, what we're seeing right now is I see several projects out there, and there's projects that are paying the YouTubers and the Twitter campaigns and everything. And even before the market started to like really capitulate, right? Like the projects were just going down. You know what I mean? And so it's like, okay, so like how effective is this? Like how many people are you going to tell on Twitter to like buy this thing that they're never going to use, dude? Like that's the thing I think is people follow other people's success a lot, right? But people are not stupid, all right? And if you're, it's like, acting, the shill, right? The excited customer, the fake excited customer. Man, come on, dude. I see influencers shilling these little games, where people are, and they're like 30 to 40 years old. Bro, they're not gonna be playing this shit. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, that's cool. Like, I was I like to play games when I was like, let's play some games. It's different. If there's tech behind it, that's one thing, right? Because then I think that an influencer can be excited about the tech, right? Like there's a lot of IP. Like for instance, with Guzzler, like what Farouk is doing, what Z is doing, is they're creating like a whole new way to integrate Web3 into games, right? It's not just a game. So when an influencer is showing that project, if they want to, right? They're not saying like, hey, everybody, let's play this game. This game is going to be the best. They're selling the next. They're shilling like new
Technology.
Innovation in blockchain. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they can they can be smart, right? But then you see a lot of people like shilling like the actual game. Like who knows? Maybe some project, like I see these exchanges. I see a bunch of influencers shilling exchanges right now. They say like this is gonna change crypto. It's like nah, it won't. Like, don't like.
Yeah.
There's no point in creating a new generation because there's a bunch of 16, 17-year olds, 18-year olds that are like they've been hearing about crypto. There's this whole generation of teenagers that have been hearing about crypto and seeing crypto millionaires getting made and whatnot. And they're going to be looking up to certain people.
Mm.
And a lot of these influencers just going to create like a fucking confused generation of people, that are just chasing things. And that's bad. Not on a, not just on a financial or whatever level, but on a psychological, like human level, that people will never be happy, right? Like they'll look outside of themselves to
Mm.
to to fill that void, right? As opposed to doing something, for themselves, right? They'll always be looking to somebody else. So I'm like kind of against, like a lot of these projects that use idols. You talk about it in Monkey Project. That's the whole idea, right? It's like any project that's using idols to sell, to confuse the masses into buying something that will just give a certain centralized group more money. I'm kind of against that, right? Hope
Yeah.
that makes sense.
No, for sure. For sure. You know, whether or not it helps make for a successful project, in terms of popularity, I'm sure,
I'll tell
you
you
know,
what, man. I'll tell you what. I was telling somebody who has a YouTube channel. I was telling him this the other day. He's been marketing this project for a long time now. Okay, and it, it's a cool project. Has a stud team. Like everything seems great. They have all these crazy partnerships coming up, and the price just keeps going down. Right.
mhm,
Every announcement. Obviously, the market is not very good, but we have a token. Like I just launched a token, and the peak of bear capitulation that is going up. Right. I don't know how
right.
long it'll go up, but it went parabolic. Right. So it is possible to go parabolic and have good price action and have a good chart even at the peak of the bear market. Okay, we just showed it, right?
Proof of concept. Absolutely.
Tony Montana
Yeah. That
is,
guy.
man, shout out to like I say, like we did, but no, I mean it's like there's this whole community like actually creating a beautiful looking chart at the peak of the bear capitulation, right? So anyway, rewind. So my buddy, he's been shilling this project, and they have crazy like this partnership, that partnership, this is happening, that's happening, there's all this stuff, there's all these these things, right, that are very sellable. And I'm like, man, like believe me, like with the science now, we have multiple Microsoft, former and current senior executives at Microsoft. We have
Mm.
senior executive at EA. We have, this VC fund, that VC fund. We have the director of this scientific research lab. We have the guy that's curing diabetes, right? We have all these things. Okay. The only thing that matters is, are more people, if for a token, right? For token price, are more people buying than selling? And a lot of people DM me. They're like, how do you moon this token? Why do all these tokens moon? I'm like, well, you take like 1,000 ETH. That's the secret. You take like 1,000 ETH and you just buy it, boom, and buy it and buy it and buy it and buy it. And you just keep buying it, more than people are selling it. Right. What we saw with Cliff is there was a lot more buys than sells. And then there's just like too many sell. I mean, you just cannot, there's just too many cells to make up for you just can't buy more than people were selling. Right.
Yeah.
So, and then price goes down, and that's it. So anyway, so I told him, and then I saw, after we had that conversation, I saw like maybe a 10 ETH buy on that project and maybe another, and I was like, oh, but then the market really capitulated, and it's like, I'm sure they'll pull through, because it's most good projects, good teams that are working. If you see a bottom somewhere, that's generally the good entry, right? It's back to it's back to where he started telling me to buy. So
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, you're right. I think we've seen, you can probably name them, several big projects, or at least big in terms of community support, number of wallets that were doing perfectly fine before they started adding utility.
yeah.
Maybe complicating, fixing something that wasn't broken. Um, uh, Sometimes the hype of what's to come is better than the outcome of the actual product delivered, right?
Yeah, many times. Many
Yeah.
times.
So, when you're building a token project, though, and I want to make sure we save some time because you said that you had some updates that you wanted to give. So I want to try to wrap. Uh-oh.
Let me see what those updates are.
I'm going to save some time, but
go ahead. I'm just going to try to find them.
Yeah. Would you prefer to start with a bunch of, or I'll say it, whatever number is adequate, number of whales or number of plankton?
Oh man, so this one's a tough one, right? This one's a tough one. So what we do at Yasha, right? And so I was having this conversation earlier this morning about this. There's no even playing field in these launches, right? Because people have the software that lets them buy 20 wallets, right, at the first block. There's lots of stuff like that happening, and even if like you block them or you tax them on block 0, they can always come back block 2, block 3, block 4, right? And so like in Monkey, there was a guy that bought like 10 wallets. He got taxed, but he just bought again and made like 10 ETH. You know what I mean? I think I saw that same multi-wallet situation on another project just last night, right? With Yasha, I think that it's better, and a lot of people think that like, oh, pre-sales aren't good or this and that. They want to just launch with their own LP. Shout out KCon, hey. and I'll tell you what. No, I mean like it follows logic, right? Because then there's not a ton of people that can just dump, right on launch. Start with a really thick LP so that it's really hard to bot. Like even if they bought, it's not a huge price impact. They'd have to spend like a ton of money. And at that point, they might as well just buy, normally, right? If they're going to spend that much, like it doesn't matter. However, and that might be a good way, but I think that with the pre-sales, with the DAOs, right, with Yasha DAO specifically, you give a bunch of everyday people, right, the opportunity to get in early. Just like on anything, and give them a safe, non-volatile environment where they can be like, okay, I like this one, I'll get this one. You know what I mean? And all they have to do really to participate in that is just be like a bit active in the community, right? A bit active in the community and, hold, they can buy and sell whatever. You know what I mean? Nobody's saying don't sell anything. And I think, yeah, so that's kind of I think that Yasha, its method can even the playing field for like your normal people that are not running any type of pre-sale or anything like that, right? And that way, like even if the bots or snipers or whatever they come in, at least like the guy on the farm and northeast Washington, right, can get in just fine and not feel like he's getting screwed somewhere, right?
Sure.
And so in that way, what would be nice is if some of those people that are getting it, they would take profit sometimes, right? So they have more more liquidity that they can get into more projects with. And if they make gains little by little, then eventually you have many whales, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have many
Mm-hmm.
whales, and hopefully they remember, who helped them do that, because then we have a lot of firepower in the future, right? So.
You tend to have, in my opinion, maybe the most realistic view of someone in your position of what it means to take profit. Um, do you agree? Like, do you think that your voice is different than most people who want you to hodl to death? Diamond handcuffs, perhaps.
Oh, well, I man, the last thing that we want to see, dude, like, listen, Yasha has made, this is one thing that always like just stumps me. You have this project and that project and this project, and people are like, oh, this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen. Meanwhile, Yasha has made like many millionaires.
Mm,
You
hmm.
know what I mean? It's like, and it, I, I don't know. So I think that people should take profit responsibly, right? Whatever that means. But profit creates a chart, right? People taking profit creates a chart. If
Yeah.
everybody doesn't take profit and then they start to capitulate, it kills the chart, right? Because then everybody's like just selling and selling and selling. But like selling, even the bots, like a bot exiting, that creates an entry. All right.
Hmm.
And so like it really depends on, like, do you enter here? Do you exit here? Are you going to buy back more? Right. What we see on Monkey is, I told him straight up, I'm like, just trade the chart, swing trade it. Go ahead. Whatever. It's free world. And you see people selling the top, buying the bottom, selling the top, buying the bottom, and it looks like a good chart.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it looks like a great chart. And so that's kind of you know, but some perspective. I think that hodling to death or whatever, all these people out there, it's like, I don't know, man. Are they gonna? Some of those gains are life changing, man. And the last thing that I ever want to hear is like, oh, somebody had 7 figures at all time high, because I hear this several, many times now. Somebody's like, I had 7 figures at all time high, and now I have this much. And
Right.
I'm like, God damn, like, why didn't you, because there's some other random guy that sold 50 grand. There's another random guy that sold 100 grand. Like, could you just scale out little by little, like on the way up?
Because when you get your hands on a mill and a mill and a half, you're waiting on it to 10x. There's never enough. I think it goes kind of back to the gambling that we talked about the other day.
Yeah. They have that
Yeah.
euphoria and they think it'll just keep going and going and going. I'll tell you what, like, the Cliff team had crazy gains at all time high. Dude, crazy gains, man. And every man, I see every single one of their wallets still there on the holders list, and I'm like, good God, that was a significant. I mean, we're talking, like, I think the half team bag and I think the full team bag was like 2 million at all time high, right?
Mm.
I think the half team bag was $1 million at all time high, and I still see them there. It's fucked up, and so like you get, it's funny. Poor Cliff team, they fade like $2 to $4 million just to get fudded, about things. It's like,
Yeah.
it's sometimes there you got to be like a little bit selfish or something. But yeah, so it goes both ways. I think You never want to see. Look, man, it's like things go up, they go down. Can you make a project that people like to trade? Right? If you have too much of an oppressive tax, people aren't going to want to trade because they need an extreme gain, right? To be able to trade it. If you have a reasonable tax, or I have something in my eye, I keep going for it, Ken.
Hey man, here. This is what we call teamwork. Go for it, man. I'll talk to myself for a minute. You dig in that eye. You let me know when you're done, man. Wait a minute. I didn't mean to take your voice out of the stream, but okay. You look. I can tell you look done. You good?
Yeah, I'm
You
good,
back?
thanks. But
All right, no problem, man.
I like that hashtag. Apply the ETH. That's Don. That's crypto Don. All the time. He's like, he called me. He's like every day I apply the ETH.
No, I think it's such a basic smart thing. Like if you're trying to figure out what you need to make a project successful, if you have the ETH, you could probably work it out. I mean, that would then suggest though that every project with money would always be successful. I think even in going back to what you said, I was around for the beginning of Cliff, and let's just say, I think in hindsight, regardless of what it rebounds to be, because I do believe, if the execution on the swap works, that it still can be a bullish project for sure.
It's a bullish project. It's a bullish project, dude. Look, I'll tell you what. This smart contract is like forked again and again and again and again and again, right? Like MRI, you guys see Marshall Rogan Inu. It's a cliff fork. It's a cliff fork. You see many projects out there that are cliff forks that do very well. It's just anyway. Keep going. Sorry.
Oh no, I want your take on this. I think the only thing that the contract was missing, outside of the point that you just made about people not taking profits earlier that could have helped the chart, is reflections. And I've had this fight over time about, well, it kind of goes against the principle of Cliff. If we want to burn the token supply, then let's not redistribute the token supply. Well, my argument is, as you've pointed out, 11,000 plus folks still holding. A lot of the people who sold would have just sold back tokens that were redistributed amongst people who are going to be long-term holders, which would have made the process of acquiring the supply to burn a bit easier. And if the burn wallet would have also received reflections, we could have made a little bit more traction, I think, in the early part of the project.
I mean, that was a lot of traction.
Sure.
It just had to come back to the ground.
Yeah.
Oh man, this is gonna sound kind of shitty, but when people make that much money that fast, it's gonna be like when you look at Monkey. Okay, Monkey went parabolic. Okay, in the peak of bearish capitulation, Monkey went to almost 7 mil, right? Which is really respectable with $1,000 ETH. Okay,
yeah.
ETH at 4,000, way different. You know what I mean? Yeah, really, like it's a way different story with ETH at 4,000. Only 450 holders, Monkey, right? But what I will say is that I'm glad that it broke out of that arch that fast, right? Like if it stayed in that arch and just kept going, it might not ever be able to create a long-term chart, right? But because it broke out before people made too much money, right? Then some people can capitulate, some people can take profit, some people can buy the dip, right? So on and so forth. And then you have a pretty good looking chart, right? Overall. if it just keeps going and going and going, it's like a lot of times once people are out, they're out, right? Like a lot of people, once they sell, they close the TG, they close the chart off their favorites, they never enter back again, especially with a high tax, right? They're like, oh, done with this, never looking back, right? They've ended that relationship. Some people like a chart that they feel like they've gotten into a rhythm with it and they know how to trade it, right? Now they just need more volume, right, to create more bigger and bigger swings, right? And then now they're traders, right? So and that can create, like, you need traders, right? That's okay. This is going back on your thing, like everybody gets people to hodl and whatnot. If you get people to hodl all the time, you're not going to have a chart, right? Like you need people to trade it. You need people to trade it. People swing trade the Yasha chart a lot. It's not the V2 Yasha chart. We should really God. I'm like, man, that poor chart. For a project that's made that many people that much money, dude. Like, you think that the chart would look better? I don't know, man. Maybe ApeCoin has made as many people as Yasha a lot of money. You know what I mean? I don't know.
No ape, just monkey.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, you do need the traders. You do need the traders because then you have volume. If all you're trying to attract are holders, people that buy and hold forever, then it's going to be, tough. It'd be tough.
Do you have a sense of a proportion of, you're on a team and you're saying, I need certain number of people to hold and I need a certain number of people to trade? Do you have an ideal number in your mind for that? Percentage wise, anyway?
No, I mean, you need a bit of a supply squeeze, right? So you do need people to hold. You do need people to trade, right? You need more people to buy than sell. It's really basic. Like, I think when it comes down to it, there's no rhyme or reason, man. Because like, when you look at Monkey, it has zero tokenomics, right? Like actual, like how the percentages of tokens are broken down. Right? There's nothing. There's 50% was burned. The rest goes in here. Free world.
Right.
You know what I mean? You might have some individuals that buy up supply that are never going to sell with the intent of squeezing the supply, right? Like sort of like they were team tokens or whatever, but they were bought or something. And those people, like, they know, you know what I mean? Like, I know a couple of them, I have a couple in my mind that I'm thinking about. And they kind of know, like, okay, like we bought up supply for fairly cheap, few grand or whatever. And it now maybe like now the supply will squeeze, there's just less supply, right? And so a lot of times when you're artificially doing that, like with the airdrop and team tokens and pre-sale and whatnot, then you kind of can design that right from the get-go, which is usually a pretty good thing, right? It's usually pretty good. But you can also do it without, you can have that same effect with zero tokenomics and just doing it with cash. Right.
So is the takeaway here from today's for this week's actual conversations that cash can fix all of your problems in crypto?
Yeah.
Cash, aka ETH.
Man, I'll tell you what. There's some people in here that are obviously not just here for the money. Like, it's real. If they've held from all-time high, if they held all the way up and then all the way down, they're obviously here for something more than just the money, right? So, and I encourage people to be like a little bit more realistic. Like, I think we talked about it on a previous episode, right? Like, what is good? Like, if I'm getting if I put this much into something, like let's say I buy an apartment building, right? I buy an apartment building, $1 million building. It's giving me 8% cap rate, right? So it's paying me. Where'd you go? Yeah, it
So
like so it's going to pay me $80,000 a year, right? Um, is 8% good? Uh, I I think so. You know what I mean? Like what you're trying to do is get additional streams of revenue. I assume that most people, there's plenty of jobs available in the US. I assume that most people have some jobs and they're not doing, crypto trading full time unless they are and they've made it, right?
mm-hmm.
Uh, generally the best is use fiat. This is not financial advice, but like use your excess money from your life and you buy floors, maybe every week, every paycheck, right? Whatever it is, like you buy. If ETH is $1,000, I think that's a buy. That's in my buy range. Like I'll buy $1,000 ETH. If it goes to 500, I'll buy more $500 ETH. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's okay. I'll scale in, but especially if you're just DCAing, if you're going like, you know, $500, $200 a week or something, it's not gonna take you that long to accumulate some ETH, and eventually, maybe the ETH will be 300%. And so, yeah, buying floors and accumulating over time using your check, and that'll give you a not with ETH, that'll just be like an investment, right? Not cash flow. But if there's some type of cash flow, I mean, you're buying cash flow, right? Like you're
Right.
buying something for money that's going to come time and time again, over and over again, pretty predictable, and then you can budget your life out that way, right? Like whatever your groceries, like like you're getting some cash flow from this. Maybe it's $300 a month. Can you go find $300 a month 10 times, right, to get 3,000 a month, right? Can 3,000 a month pay your rent? Maybe, right? Can it pay your car? Maybe. Can it buy your groceries? Maybe, right?
Yeah. I think the key though is, and maybe this is the kind of the benefit of finding a good incubator that you could trust is how many times will you have to make an investment to hit on something that is not going to A, rug, or B, fall off in the first 30, 60 days, even if it's not a rug, just a failed project. Then generate consistently $300 a month and then go replicate that. Like the problem, it's kind of like in the circus, the spinning plates. Like I have to spin this plate, then go over here and find this other project and spin that plate before this plate stops, and then go try to spin a third plate. When most of the goings on outside of the decision to, like you said, push the button, everything else is out of my control as an investor, gambler. Right?
Yeah.
Like I don't get to, the team stops working or something changes or something changes direction. It's not on me. If I have ultimate faith in something and I ape, now I'm short on resources for other projects. I don't ape, this thing goes parabolic, and I'm sad because I didn't ape. It's a lot. I think I'm ultimately trying to get to this. There's lots of people who've already figured out their life in crypto, and they're fine. Like they can apply the ETH all year long, and if and maybe miss and just say 2022 was a bad year. I missed on 100 projects, but that's fine. I'll be back. But for people who are just getting started, I think about them more
Yasha.
than anybody, right?
Yasha.
Yeah.
No,
But yeah,
Yasha.
yeah,
I mean, I think it's the only thing. Like, if Yasha launches one project per month, right? It's almost like, yeah. I mean, that's the cash flow there.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there it is.
I don't
I,
know if I asked you this. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no. Yeah. You go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if I asked you this before, either on the record or off. Why not? And I'm sure you've heard this 100 times at least. Why not a strategy that builds and maxes out one project, and then goes and takes all those people and all that money to a new project to build and max out.
What do you mean, like close down one project and go to the next one?
Or not necessarily close, but reach a certain level of success that is arguably, take a project to 100 million market cap and say at this point we've made enough people a lot of money. We'll go to another project, make it $100 million market cap, and then go to the next project, and so on and so forth.
Oh my goodness! I mean, $100 million market cap is really hard to do, right? It's very, very hard. I don't even know why it happens sometimes, right?
Mm,
Okay, there's that. Then, as an incubator, right? You're not like, each project has its own team. We can
right.
provide the tools, right? We can be like, okay, like let's say you're Boo and Alien, or let's say you're Pochi and, or let's talk about Pochi, right? Let's say that you're Doc D and AG. Okay, let's say they're like, okay, they want a token, they want to make NFTs, they have this idea, so on and so forth. Okay, and they need to launch the project and whatever it is. Okay, what Yasha does, right, is maybe like with the web dev help, with the token creation, raising the money for the LP, and maybe some marketing, launching the project. The community, the DAO in Yasha, supports the project, right? Whether it's mods, whether it's like telling people about the project, some extra marketing, whatever it is, making sure the community is positive, right? Like that's sort of like
Mm-hmm.
their duty as a Yasha DAO member, is to make the launch an enjoyable experience where people aren't just coming into the TG and like fudding like this and that, right? That's like
Mm-hmm.
part of the incubation. If our launch strategy, right, or whatever it is, helps a project do very well in price action, then sure. But the execution, right, of that project long term is going to come down onto that team, right? The team can execute and have a very successful project and still have bad token price action, right? Like there's nothing like, even this game that my buddy has been shilling really hard. They're probably building an extremely legitimate game with a lot of legitimate partners, and it might make them a lot of money, right, on the back end. That doesn't necessarily translate. Like their chart right now is like, it's like straight down. You know what I mean? It's like sideways for a few days and then just down, right? Granted, ETH is like not doing very well. Okay. And so like maybe eventually their chart might recover, right? Maybe it'll recover today. They just apply 1,000 ETH and recover their chart. Real, that's all you got to do, guys.
Secret to success.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, but you've pointed out, and I think that a shortcoming of that assessment, in my opinion, is that you've pointed out the benefits of the kind of social capital that comes with, um, having these large communities, each of which has a special set of skills, etc. The other part of that, though, is if you can move tens of thousands of people to a project, you can generate success, because on the strength of the success of the project or the leadership team, people will be willing to invest in a project that they may not have supported otherwise, but for peyote's a part of it, but for D's a part of it, T's a part of it, right? So in that way, if the efforts were concentrated, you don't think that you could almost guarantee the success of a project?
Oh, that would be tough, man. I don't know what you want me to say, but you know
Well,
what
not financial advice,
I mean?
just a theoretical discussion. But I'm just wondering, like, yeah, I mean, you've pointed out over and over that that a project just needs ETH, right? People bring the ETH. The project can bring the ETH, but the individual investor gamblers can bring the ETH. And if you can motivate them to show up to a project, and there's a smaller selection of projects to be had,
They
and
got
you've just paid them, got them paid from the previous project,
that was
I'd
the
be
idea,
willing.
bro. That
Yeah,
was the idea. We made people
yeah,
a bunch of money here if they just took some profit, right? Maybe made some entry for new people and kept shilling. They could take a little profit. They'd have more ETH. Then we go to. You could do another.
yeah.
You could launch the next project. Pretty soon, maybe 4 projects in, they're all millionaires, right? And they have some liquidity,
Hmm.
and then every single project can do well, right? That's why I think you saw some of our projects like little by little, because everybody in Yasha DAO had some extra liquidity lying around, right? Because they had, some had taken some profit, and so then the next one they could invest, and so on and so forth. And we've made several whales. I see a couple of you guys out there, but at the same time, there's a lot of rotation. Like, for instance, that one project that scammed everybody, that was siphoning people away. People in
Yeah,
Yasha lost over $1 million in liquidity.
right.
What does that do? Not just for their pocket and their ability to apply the ETH, right? But what does that do psychologically? They become more cautious, for everything. Should they be more cautious towards the projects coming out of Yasha? I don't know. That's up to them, right? Like, it's not going to be. There's always going to be some rotation. We get a lot of, like, there's people in Cliff chat. They come and they're like, hey, like, if you just stop launching projects, like, maybe we can get some action. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's a launch pad. Like, it's not, you know what I mean? Like, what do you want us to do? Like, people, man, it's just, it's a launch pad. Cliff was launched from a launch pad.
Yeah.
Then Cliff people don't want the launch pad that launched it to launch anything, dude. Like, I'm like, why would you say that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we tried to be courteous, we tried to, like, space some things out and whatnot, right? But the show must go on for the launch pad utility, unless, like, Cliff people are just demanding us just shut the doors, and stop
Stop
getting
all this
projects.
launching.
You know what I mean? Yeah, like, what do you want us to do?
Oh
So
man.
yeah, so I mean, I get it. I understand the frustration, but, like, they should also be frustrated. Look, man, we built this entire backend API that is monitoring, like, so many things on blockchain. You know what I mean? We use it privately, okay? And man, the amount of rotation, dude, the people in Cliff, all-time high, they have some money, they're gonna do the same thing that got them a lot of money in Cliff. What do they do? Like, okay, 3 ETH here, 3 ETH here, 3 ETH here, all rugs. Okay, they get rugged like 3 times in a row on some random projects that they're getting into. Then they're like out of ETH. They're like, oh shoot, I need more ETH. Let's sell 10 more ETH of Cliff. Boom, they have 10 more ETH. What do they do then? 1 ETH here, 2 ETH there, 4 ETH there. Boom. Another one, another rug. And we're like, we can see all this, and we're like, holy shit. Like, this is bad. And so then you have people that are, like, normal, wondering, like, they see Yasha launches something, they see I launch something, they see whatever happens, right? And then they're like, this is why this is happening to Cliff. This is why this other, and it's like, no, not really. I mean, there's some rotation, okay, but there's also people marketing their own scams, right? Like, inside of, some of these groups, and they somehow convinced over $1 million in the ecosystem to rotate into a scam, right?
Right.
And so, like, we can show people, like, I was like, somebody was like, this isn't true, this is and I'm like, actually, it is, because we we can see it. And when you look at price impact, okay, if you have $100 million market cap, or whatever, and there's like this many ETH in the LP, and this many people sell this many ETH, right? There's a percentage of how much price impact that's going to have. Okay. So it's is what it is, man.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, we have hit the hour mark and we haven't got to any updates that you may have. So I want to make sure that if you do have some, that you get them in.
I don't really have too many updates. Everything is kind of moving according as planned. Um, aside from the market, being really bad and Yasha chart looking really bad, I think everything is going according to plan. I will say just a little tidbit. I got something. It's it's the same thing as usual. The theory chart has been really stable. You know what I
Mm.
mean? It's been super stable. It's been in a downtrend. It looks painful, right? You look at the rest of the market. The rest of the market also looks painful. I think that because theory has been a lot of people's most stable, less fluctuating hold, losses that they have elsewhere they can make up for, or a lot of people are planning to have cash, right? So that they can like survive in maybe like a crazy recession or something, or whatever, I don't know what they're thinking. And so I think that's like what quite a bit of the, some of the negative price action on theory has been is people making up for losses, right? If they were holding ETH and they're down 50% on ETH or whatever, or more, right? That luckily theory has been stable for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we had the project itself is so bullish. Like you see some of the updates that I put out there, I'm like, good God, like people don't like this. It's crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's but that's just for my perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether
Yeah.
you'll have influencers and YouTubers and whatnot cover, I don't know, this swap and this game and this exchange and stuff that nobody's ever going to use, dude.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, straight up. You know what
Because the team has applied the ETH to them.
Yeah, apply
That's how it
the ETH,
works.
bro.
It's applied the ETH.
You see
Yeah.
behind the curtain. Apply the ETH. Yeah, but like a project that is like, funding a cure for diabetes, potentially funding a cure for diabetes and is disrupting $1 trillion industry, 2% of global GDP. They don't want to cover that. They'd rather cover stupid shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Fucking stupid. So anyway, that's the only update. You know what I mean? I think
Cool.
we'll be able to find our niche, guys. It's for those that are here because of the science DAO and whatnot. I think finding the niche, finding the target, is really the goal, because we had several people like in some of our spaces recently, directors at different research labs and scientific funds have come in and listened and have followed the page and whatnot, and they're working on DeSci as well. So there's opportunity for big collaborations here in the future as well. So
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty exciting. So yeah.
Well, we'll wrap it there. Thanks for watching, and we will be back pretty soon, either next week or if something bullish happens, we'll be back with another episode.
Cool. Thanks, man. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.